You are listening to Spiritual Insurgency with Jason Lupo and Aaron Lujan, a show that brings reckoning to today's culture and the impact on the body of the church. No topic is off the table on the quest to take back our churches. Join Jason and Aaron and swim against the current of the modern culture.
Welcome to Spiritual Insurgency. I'm Jason Lupo with my co-host Aaron Lujan.
Let's go Dodgers! Let's go Dodgers! World champs, baby.
World champs. Well, okay, so here's the deal. Here's what we're doing today. We're going to have this conversation on sports because it's actually relevant to the rest of our conversation, which is on muscular Christianity. We promised it last week. We're bringing it to you today.
We're bringing it.
So I think it's relevant that we talk about sport.
Absolutely.
But we are also going to throw in a little bit of election stuff because, well, the election is going to be 3 days away. So kind of a critical time in the world. But let's talk about this for a second. All right, so the Dodgers win the World Series.
Yes, sir.
Last time was in 2020 in a shortened season.
It didn't count.
Some people claim it doesn't count.
Well, we
I
showed
think
them.
It still counts.
Absolutely.
So what is kind of the deciding factor? Like, what do you think gave them the huge edge over the Yankees, other than the fact that Aaron Judge couldn't hit a ball?
This is the best Dodger team I think we've had ever. I mean, Ohtani is cemented as a Hall of Famer. You know, he's surrounded by a supporting cast that I don't think we've ever seen before. And this team has grit. I mean, Freddie Freeman was sprained ankle in September, wasn't even supposed to go in. And he was just that prodigal, that underdog American story, right? That he just came in and he set records. He's the MVP. There's a lot to say. Where do we begin to unpack it, Jason?
Well, I mean, we can unpack it in like 20,000 different ways. But
right.
Ohtani is a huge... He's a once-in-a-lifetime kind of player, right? I mean, here's a guy that can pitch. He can hit. When last year or the year before, when he was hitting and he was basically the home run leader for a good chunk of the season, he went to the home run derby, and that's where everybody found out that Ohtani never took batting practice. But the first time he ever took batting practice in the major leagues was the morning of the home run derby. That was actually his first and only batting practice.
He was supposed to be an Olympic swimmer, rumor had it, before he got into baseball.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
That's kind of crazy.
That is wild.
Well, and it's interesting because I think at some point, this might not be the show for it, but at some point we should break down why we're seeing this influx of Asian players coming into the MLB and having so much success, because it's almost like these players know exactly how to place the ball where they want it to go.
And it's an exciting time for baseball. Sorry to interrupt you, Jason. 15 million were watching the World Series and for Game 2, comparably to approximately 13 million in the States.
Yeah, it has become one of the world sports.
Yeah.
And what's intriguing is from baseball's always been America's pastime, and it kind of went away. It became football, right? Like the NFL has taken over the market share of viewership in the United States. They do exist at different times in the year, but the NFL has kind of become America's pastime. But baseball is quickly becoming the world's pastime.
It is. It's an exciting time for baseball because I think they were sort of on the decline. But, going back to the Dodgers, I think it goes back to leadership. Dave Roberts arguably has cemented himself as one of the greatest managers in MLB history. No disrespect to Tommy Lasorda, but 9 for 9 in postseason appearances, 8 NL West titles, 4 World Series appearances, 2 World Series titles, .627 regular season winning percentage, and 56 postseason wins, 6th most of all time. And that goes back to leadership when you consider the fact that in the postseason, the Dodgers didn't have Ohtani, they didn't have Glasnow, Clayton Kershaw, Gavin Stone, Dustin May, Tony Gonsolin, Emmett Sheehan, River Ryan, or Kyle Hurt. They did it with the Beak squad, I feel like.
Well, I think I speak for a lot of Americans that we're just happy it wasn't the Astros.
What's wrong with the Astros?
They're cheaters.
Okay.
It's like the Deflatriots.
The Deflatriots. I didn't know that.
Tom Shady and Bill Belichick.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a whole nother conversation. We need a sports show. That's what we need.
We're going to do one, guys.
We're going to do a sports show.
But I just want to congratulate all the Angelinos out there. I'm from LA. I know this is airing throughout Rockies country, so please nobody put a hit on me. But congratulations to the city of LA. Congratulations to all the Angelinos. Congratulations to the Dodgers. We did it, and we'll bring it back next year.
So I want a hot take on this for a second. Okay. The payroll for 2024 for the MLB. Now, keep in mind that this is a little bit skewed because the Dodgers are going to be paying Shohei Ohtani for, like, I don't know, till he dies, right? They signed this $700 million contract with Shohei Ohtani, but it's not really paid out up front. It's paid out over the span of a lot of years. So this is a little bit skewed, and there's a lot of players that have similar contracts, but the Mets spent the most amount of money, $305 million. The Yankees, $303 million. The Dodgers, $249 million. And then we go down the list, and we're in Colorado. Okay, your Rockies spent $142 million, 16th, right? Smack dab in the middle. Mm-hmm. Atrocious.
And it's not working.
Absolutely atrocious. I mean, I love Charlie Blackmon. I'm kind of glad he's retiring. I think it's time to get some fresh blood in there. But you got to do something about your bullpen. But at the bottom, here's where I believe the real winners are. Okay, the Guardians make it pretty far into the playoffs, $93 million, 28th on the list. Baltimore Orioles, great season, $94 million. Then you go up, the Tigers, $103 million, 24th. Detroit. I'm going to say that the biggest winners this year in the MLB are the Tigers. They make it to the championship, the
AL West, the AL championship,
the AL championship, and they lose obviously. But in the process, here's a team, here's a city. Detroit has struggled for many years in the sports world. They're reinvigorating their population in terms of the sports world. They haven't spent a whole lot of money, and they had absolutely phenomenal success. And I think the other team to look out for and watch is the Reds, right? Number 22, $106 million. I think that they've benefited greatly from these last 2 years. From, basically if you were to ask somebody to list all the teams in baseball, you'd probably forget the Reds.
Yeah.
Because it's the Reds.
It's the Reds. It's Cincinnati.
Cincinnati.
Is that still a city?
It's one of the coolest cities.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Have you ever been?
No, and I apologize to the state of Ohio. Please forgive me.
Well, so you forget how big Ohio is and the fact that they have multiple professional sports teams in multiple cities. Uh-huh. But, because here you have Cleveland, right? The Guardians, $93 million, also had a phenomenal season. In the grand scheme of things, they were 28th on the list. But, Cincinnati is this little big, quaint city. There's an oxymoron for you. But it sits right on the other side of Kentucky. You can walk across the bridge.
They're polite.
Across straight, state lines. But the Bengals Stadium and the Reds Stadium are 2,000 feet from each other. And they've created this nice little walking district that you can actually walk from each stadium. And really cool. There's a lot of history there. And, here we have Pete Rose that just passed. And, I mean, he makes Cincinnati.
I met Pete Rose in L.A. at a baseball card shop once.
So, we don't want to spend too much time on this because this is Christian radio, and we do want to take this to Christian masculinity, but muscular Christianity. But I do want to ask this question, just parting question. Pete Rose, Hall of Fame.
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Why?
It's numbers.
So I think a lot of people for a long time have said, well, when Pete Rose passes, we'll finally put him in the Hall of Fame. I think it's going to happen. I think he probably deserves to be there.
For sure.
Especially with everything that's gone on now. It seems like it's kind of just at his present time, it was probably pretty scandalous. But now here you have Shohei Ohtani, his interpreter, betting on sports and spending millions of dollars. Who knows? Maybe Shohei's involved. Maybe he's not. But put Pete Rose in the Hall of Fame. I agree.
One thing I also want to add in a parting commentary to the World Series victory by the Los Angeles Dodgers is Walker Buehler had the worst regular season of his career this season. He was starting for the Dodgers in October out of necessity. He pitched Buehler. He pitched, everyone was saying that when he was on the mound, right? Buehler. He pitched 5 shutout innings in Game 3 of the World Series at Yankee Stadium. 2 days later, he got the final 3 outs to win it all. What that tells me, Christian, don't give up. Don't ever quit. Perseverance is all that matters in this game of life.
You know what it tells me?
What does it tell you?
Enough with this closing nonsense in baseball. Just have starting pitchers pitch like 3 or 4 innings. He closed out a phenomenal game. He wasn't a closer. He wasn't crazy. He wasn't throwing, over 100 miles an hour every single ball he was tossing. I've just never understood why you spend so much money in baseball on a guy that's only going to pitch like to three batters every 3 out of 6 games.
Fair enough.
It's never made sense to me. But anyways, we're gonna go to a brief timeout. When we come back, we're going to go back to our regular airing of this show that's not involving sports, even though it's fun to talk about.
Amen.
So hang with us.
Teamwork is at the core of any successful organization. Full Armor Sports, led by national champion coach Jason Lupo, is now registering for school year sports programs. Full Armor is a multi-sport teaching and training organization with homeschool options available. All of Full Armor sports coaches are certified and experts in their field. Full Armor's coaches combine for over 500 years of coaching experience. They will help your kids gain fundamental skills, the concepts of teamwork, essential to being successful throughout their lives. Multiple sports options are available now, from swimming, softball and volleyball, to powerlifting and youth MMA. The faith-based approach to making sports fun and productive are a great choice for your kids at Full Armor Sports Teams. Learn more at fullarmorsportsteams.com.
Welcome back to Spiritual Insurgency. I'm Jason Lupo with my co-host Aaron Lujan.
Good morning, Jason.
We just had the conversation about one current event, but we have another big current event coming up, the election.
Oh, no.
Just a couple days away before we find out who is the ultimate winner. And we also get done with political ads for
Thank
at least
God.
the scope of a couple months.
We can check our mail again.
Don't worry, they'll start again. But anyways, there's a lot to look forward to, but there's also a lot to be worried about, I think. But we've talked about that on this show. Worrying might not be the ultimate choice in feelings. We do trust God that he's in control of this thing, even though this election season seems rather out of control. And we've seen a lot of things happen in this last week leading up to this election. And but ultimately, I think Trump is still going to be victorious if it's counted right. I think he wins Pennsylvania. I think he wins North Carolina. He wins Georgia. I think he wins Arizona. And Nevada's still a toss-up.
So it's too big to rig?
I think it's too big to rig. I don't think that Kamala wins the blue wall. I don't think she wins Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, which is kind of her only path forward. I think Trump takes one of those. I think Trump could take Michigan. And then what's really interesting is, New Hampshire. Everybody forgets about it. A little small. It doesn't really matter. It's only a couple electoral votes, but it could swing.
Do you expect any major event to disrupt election day? Do you expect any sort of Trojan horse to emerge?
Listen, there's already been reports of ballot boxes being set on fire in Washington and in Oregon, that there is some serious mischief going on with these ballot boxes. I don't think this is going to be a clean election. I don't. I do think that if Trump were to lose this election and there was any indication of voter fraud, a.k.a. ballots being pulled out of luggages, I don't think we're going to have an answer on election night.
I don't either.
I don't think we're going to know on Tuesday night.
No.
Which I think is going to be concerning to a lot of people, that they don't know who the victor is. But if you take it one further, if there's any indication of a stolen election, I think January 6th, which I don't believe really is any big deal, is going to be a blimp on history. It's going to be small in comparison to the riots and the war that's about to take place if this election were to be stolen. And I think we've seen people hint at it, right? I think Bill Clinton accidentally hinted at it the other day.
Well, Kamala Harris gave a speech that Trump is wanting generals that are loyal to him like Hitler. So we've dehumanized her. She's dehumanized her opponent. And it's particularly interesting in light of that DOD directive that allows the U.S. military to kill American citizens. This is over the top, unprecedented rhetoric.
Yeah, I mean it's here's Joe Biden. It's about who counts the votes and whether they should count at all.
That's why I'm asking the question, Jason. I don't expect there to just be this clean cut, we're going to count the votes on election day and we're going to have an answer. I think that if it's too big to rig, they have a card up their sleeve and we don't know what it is, but it's going to be immense.
I think if you were a Democrat, which I don't think, this is not a Democrat Republican thing. This is like a establishment uniparty versus the rest of the world thing.
Neo-feudalism.
Yeah, I think you look at the presidency and you go, okay, all eyes are on the presidency. All eyes are on this election integrity thing. Maybe we can't steal the presidency. But what I do believe is going to happen is some of these local races, they're going to steal those. I think they're going to steal state House races. I think they're going to steal state Senate races. I think they're going to steal the U.S. House and U.S. Senate races. I think that maybe they can't get away with stealing the presidency, but because all of our focus is on the presidency for a very wrong reason, by the way, it takes the eyes off of everything else. Mm-hmm. And I think we are going to have election integrity issues elsewhere. Election
integrity issues is one thing. Another concern that I have is constitutionally, my understanding is that the vice president must certify the election. And the vice president is Kamala Harris. So there's been whispering that what if Kamala Harris refuses to certify a Trump win?
Well, that's like a January 6th thing all over again, right? That was the whole, whole situation with January 6th to begin with. I don't know.
That would be a constitutional crisis because the Constitution provides for Vice President Harris to certify a Trump win, assuming Trump wins.
It's going to come back to, once again, it's going to come back to whatever happens, we could have a January 6th times 100.
A real J6.
A real J6.
Not the paid Antifa people that Pelosi and the Sergeant of Arms in the Capitol building coordinated, but actual MAGA people.
Yeah, I mean, listen, okay, you have a peaceful assembly, which is everybody's right to do, given to us by the Constitution, that are then let in peacefully into the Capitol. And if you watch the videos, these people that are peacefully allowed into the Capitol, they didn't storm the Capitol. Stupidest thing on the face of the earth to think that they stormed the Capitol. It's rhetoric that is just unnecessary. But they are let into the Capitol peacefully, and most of them are just looking around because they're in awe of the fact that they're standing in a building that they had never seen before in their lives.
They were walking in line as if they were at the Smithsonian Museum.
Yeah, there was nothing unpeaceful about it. The only people there's a few bad actors. There's always a couple bad actors.
And they all ended up being paid leftist activists.
But they were probably planted.
Tucker's documentary exposed that.
And they might have been planted by the FBI.
Probably.
Right? So the ones that are just there as citizens of the United States, peacefully assembling, that are escorted, invited into the Capitol to frame them for crimes that don't actually exist. Those people are then, the justice system is weaponized against them. Innocent people, elderly people thrown in jail because they were at this January 6th peaceful assembly.
And many are still in federal prison today.
Yes, even though the Supreme Court has kind of ruled that, you've got to stop prosecuting these people, and this prosecutorial misconduct is excessive.
And I would love Trump to pardon them day one.
I think he will.
I hope so.
I think he will. I think Trump should pardon a lot of people.
If he doesn't, please pay attention.
Yeah, this whole thing about, you can't question the narrative. So Dominion Voting Systems came out and said, we will sue anybody that says that, Dominion systems are the cause of election fraud.
Right.
They come out and say that. It's trailing news headline everywhere.
Publicly
Dominion
admitted.
Voting System has said, you cannot question us. Mm-hmm. Okay? And Jenna Griswold in the state of Colorado said, you cannot question me. And anybody that questioned her was essentially sued or thrown in jail or had some sort of crime made up against them.
Jenna Griswold, if you're listening, you're a filthy communist. Please continue.
She's not listening to 670. She doesn't care.
I had to say that.
But Jenna Griswold, here you go.
Be in prison.
Shutting down free speech. And listen, Alex Jones, okay? Was some of the stuff they said probably stupid? Yeah, he's Alex Jones, right? He has made millions of dollars off of conspiracy. Now, does that mean that he just shouldn't have the right to voice concerns, voice opinions, to have this conversation? No. I think that at the end of the day, this censorship that's taking place where we're trying to shut down any viewpoint that is not the mainstream viewpoint, that's contrary to the mainstream, does not mean that you should be thrown in jail, that you should be assaulted, that you should be thrown in prison, sued for $1.5 billion. Mm-hmm. It's just crazy. And to think that a company can go, no, you can't question my product. No, you can't question what we do. How did we get to the opioid crisis? A company that skirted the rules, that weaponized anything that they could in order to shut up the general public. We've had millions of lives lost to vaccine injuries. Vaccine injuries that you're not allowed to question, that you're not allowed to sue for, that you can't talk about.
Well, they granted themselves legal immunity before they released the product.
Exactly, 100%. And these are special interest groups that are controlling these elections. And they want the easiest way forward, the easiest way that they can steal an election. Mm-hmm. And when they can control an election with money or with power or with leverage, then they control who's in the legislature and they control what laws are passed. And now you have protectionism. You have protectionism of big business for them to do whatever they want, hurt whoever they want, and nobody can question it. And if you do question it, guess what? We're going to throw you in jail.
Right.
That's just wrong.
Completely wrong. It's evil.
So on that note, vote no on 131 because it's another way for them to buy elections. That's what it is. Vote no on Prop 131. Ranked choice voting is atrocious. Mm-hmm. And all it's going to do is create a centrist candidate that is appealing to special interest groups and in lobbies. They want to get rid of the far left. They want to get rid of the far right. Now, I believe strongly that there is need for discourse in this country. Yes, I 100% drastically disagree with the far left. But you know what? In this ecosystem, in this political ecosystem that we have, we need the far left. We need the far left in order to justify the far right. We need the far left in order to have this discourse that slows down the lawmaking process. We need the far right. We need the entire scope of the continuum that exists in this country of beliefs because it allows for meaningful discourse in this country.
And you have
which moves us forward.
And you have something to compare it to, right?
100%. I think it's necessary. I think the day that we start trying to shut down the differing viewpoints of this country is when we become a communist socialist nation where we are under the control of one party.
Yes.
So, anyways, we're going to take a brief time out. When we come back, we're going to have a conversation on muscular Christianity. You've now waited 23 minutes for this conversation we promised we'd have.
It'll be worth it, I promise.
And we're going to use it.
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned. Hang with us.
Full Armor Sports Teams has a new facility for after-school youth programs. It's located at 2380 Montebello near North Academy and Union with 2 pools for swim lessons and swim teams, a weight room for powerlifting, conditioning, and more. Full Armor Sports Teams is a Christ-centered and family-oriented organization bringing the youth of Colorado Springs together. For more info on after-school and homeschool programs, go to fullarmorsportsteams.com or call 719-629-SWIM.
Welcome back to Spiritual Insurgency. I'm Jason Lupo with my co-host Aaron Lujan.
What's happening, bro?
And the moment you've all been waiting for, muscular Christianity.
Oh, yeah.
Take it away. What do we have? What's the history?
Wow, I didn't know I was going to be on the spot.
You're on the spot.
We're going to explore this idea of mascular Christianity. Jason brought it to my attention recently, and I was like, wow, that sounds interesting. What is that? And to my surprise, there's not very many books, not very many record of a movement that took place in the late 19th century. And the context of this is history is cyclical, right? It's that old adage, hard times create strong men, good times create weak men, and the repeat, rinse, repeat. And in the late 19th century, during the Industrial Revolution, we saw men move from the farms and from their agrarian societies into the city, finding work in white-collar jobs. and men started to become a little soft. And historians point out, and a lot of people defend this, that non-Christian secular historians as well as Christian historians have pointed to the late 19th century as a time in church history when the church was feminized, when it lost its masculinity. And the majority of churchgoers, as it is true today, are predominantly women. And this resulted in a lot more effeminate music and this theology that the body is disconnected from the spirit, and that it's almost as if the spirit is superior to the body. And there's almost like this downplaying of the body. And the people at the time were looking at this and were looking as to why men were not interested in going to church, and why was the church predominantly female. And so out of this rose a movement that actually started in England. And I believe some of the original thinkers at the time were writing books that were essentially saying that we need men to revisit their innate traits of masculinity, strength, being able to actually be physically strong, because there's a direct correlation between physical strength and vitality in the spirit, right? So if you're working out, if you're dedicated to health and fitness, you're developing traits and characteristics that are very conducive to a strong faith life and a strong spirit life, like perseverance, like commitment, like keeping your word, and discipline. Paul talks a lot about, and using a lot of analogies with sport, that we're to subject our bodies and that we're to train to win the prize. And so what came out of this muscular Christianity movement was this idea that modern society needed to promote physical prowess with, in combination, moral and spiritual values. This actually gave birth to the Boy Scouts, and it gave birth to the YMCA. And I believe this is an important idea and concept to explore. And we're going to be, I don't know how many weeks we're going to do this, but definitely, Jason, on the next show, I imagine, go into this a little deeper. And I'm going to spend the next week reading some of the original thinkers' books so that I can come back to you guys next Saturday and really get into this, because I think that this may be one of the solutions to a lot of the ails that we're experiencing today. Statistically, the testosterone levels are down amongst men. I've talked about this on the show before. Our young men are being weakened. They're being weakened with the food. They're being weakened with the chemicals in the water. They're being weakened in the culture. Drake is painting his nails and teaching people that that's cool. And I believe that men have a special role in the church as the head. The scripture talks about that Christ is the head of man, man is the head of woman. Jesus didn't send his one and only daughter. He sent his one and only son. Men and women are very different. Men have a unique and a role to lead society and lead culture and defend the culture, defend the weak. And so this idea of muscular Christianity is very interesting to me, and I want to discuss it because I really think that this is going to be a solution to a lot of our problems.
So, here's Thomas Hughes, credited with helping establish the main tenets of muscular Christianity. And Tom Brown at Oxford, Hughes stated that the muscular Christians have hold of the old chivalrous and Christian belief that a man's body is given to him to be trained and brought into subjection and then used for the protection of the weak, the advancement of all righteous cause, and the subduing of the earth which God has given to the children of men. And Richard Andrew Mayer, a professor at Baylor University, explains Tom Hughes' 6 definitions of muscular Christianity through 6 criteria. He wrote a dissertation about Thomas Hughes' notion of muscular Christianity by analyzing the career of the one and only Lance Armstrong, which we'll get to in a sec, probably before the scandal broke. But number 1, a man's body is given to him by God. Number 2, and to be trained. 3, and brought into subjection. 4, and then used for the protection of the weak. 5, for the advancement of all righteous causes. And 6, for the subduing of the earth, which God has given to the children of men. So he takes and he breaks this down and he goes, okay, there's 6 portions, there's 6 notions, there's 6 criteria that Thomas Hughes put forward, right? A man's body is given to him by God. Well, we know this, right? We're made in God's own image. We are made both male and female. God has given us life. He's grown us. He's known us from the time that we were conceived. And it's to be trained, right? It's to be trained in righteousness. It's to be trained physically and brought into subjection. And this is the part where I think that we have to pause for a second and talk about, because what is this word subjection? What does this mean? And brought into subjection. I think this is a point that we can converse on.
I think it's denying the flesh, because there's so much temptation. In fact, we live in a culture that celebrates the temptation, right? The pornography is easily accessible. The poisonous food is easily accessible. It's easier to focus on video games instead of real life. The high-speed internet and the culture surrounding us celebrates a 2 Timothy generation, which is indulge in your pleasures. And the culture doesn't celebrate men who subject themselves and deny themselves. Jesus sets the perfect example. He denied himself all the way to the cross. The 40 days and the 40 nights that he spent in the desert without the food and the water, being tempted by the devil, was a subjection and a denial of the flesh. And we are in the exact opposite culture. And so I think this idea of muscular Christianity and celebrating and encouraging, especially young men, to get in the gym, get involved in sports, mandates that they subject themselves and they also deny themselves. It's a lot easier to stay in bed and hit the snooze when you've made a decision that you're going to be in the gym at 7 a.m. In addition to that, monitoring your diet. If you're working out, you want to be able to eat the sufficient amount of protein, drink the sufficient amount of water, take the creatine. Getting into the gym with the right proper nutrition means I'm not going to McDonald's. I'm not crushing the bag of chips at 11 o'clock. And I think muscular Christianity's premise is that type of training, that type of subjection, that denial of the flesh makes for a stronger Christian and allows that individual to be able to share the gospel with authority and to be able to follow God better because their character has been molded.
Yeah, I mean, 1 Corinthians 9:24. Do you not know that those who run in a race all run, but one receives the prize? Run in such a way that you may obtain it. And everyone who competes for the prize is temperate in all things. Now they do it to obtain a perishable crown, but we for an imperishable crown. Therefore I run thus, not with uncertainty. Thus I fight not as one who beats the air, but I discipline my body and bring it into subjection, lest when I have preached to others, I myself should become disqualified. I think that when we talk about bringing our body into subjection or bringing us into subjection, having the ability to have that control over what we do, right? Having that ability to control our minds, control our body so we don't fall into that temptation.
Please continue. I just wanted to quickly interject. One of the fruits of the Holy Spirit is self-control.
Yeah. And self-governance, right? Yeah. Like self-control, self-governance, right? That ability to first and foremost have control of ourselves, right? Because when you get carried away and when you are hot-headed, when you don't have control of your own emotions, you can't lead. You can't lead a family.
Correct.
And I think that this is a critical element of the fact that it is easy for us to lose control, right? We get impatient. We can be impatient. And then what do? We resort to yelling. We resort screaming.
Violence at worst.
Violence sometimes. I don't.
Never.
Not you.
Not me. We're peaceful people.
We don't resort to violence, but some people do, right? Where's the control?
Right.
Because if you're leading your family and you're a father and you don't have that control and you're going to go off on your children or lose control of your emotions, then you are not raising them up because you don't have the self-control and the self-governance. You haven't brought your own body, your own mind, your own emotions into subjection. Go ahead.
There's a historian, Putney is his last name, that argues that one of the central tenets of muscular Christianity was that the body should be made fit not simply for health or for pleasure, but in order to make it a more effective tool for service, to follow Jesus. He says the idea was to use primitive bodies to advance civilized ideals. that exercise had a higher purpose. That French physical culturalist Georges Herbert put it, be strong to be useful. And I think that we are living in a time where it's going to require physically strong men to defend the innocent and the weak. And I think we're about to enter a period in American history where we're going to have to revisit this idea of providing for yourself, growing your own food, and coming back to terms with the elements of nature, because our grid is so fragile right now that I think subconsciously, at a subconscious level, society is asking themselves, where are the strong, virtuous men who are going to defend all that is good and all that is honorable and all that is worthy of praise? These holy ideals of the innocence of children. Where are the strong men that are going to keep their families together, die to themselves to protect their progeny? And I think that this muscular Christianity is such a powerful idea, and I think that's the reason why we're talking about it.
Yeah, it's not a denomination, right? And it wasn't even this, like, I think, purposeful movement in as much as it was people recognizing the importance of bringing back this manhood into our society. And it's something we've talked about quite a bit, right? Masculinity is dying. There's an attack on masculinity. There's an attack on masculinity. It's called toxic, blah, 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 blah. But at the end of the day, we need men that are going to step up and lead in their communities and their churches and their families. And to do that, number one, you have to be strong mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, but you have to have control. You have to have self-control. And so I think it was interesting. I was teaching yesterday and my class was kind of crazy, and I just stopped and I looked at them, as I always do. And they eventually stopped, because when I stop and there's quiet and I stop talking, they kind of just look at me and they stop talking. And one of the kids goes, "Man, you have a lot of patience." And I said, "Yes." I said, "I love you all greatly, but you're driving me nuts." That was the extent. And it's like, I'm not going to lose control over you guys, right? Because emotion spawns more emotion. And so if I were to start yelling, then it just is going to drive the situation out of control. And so you bring it back to a calm level where it's like, okay, I'm taking back dominance, right? I'm taking back dominion. And there's differing ways that you can do that. And one of the ways is you stand above, right? And what we've done in today's culture is we've said, okay, we need to take on this role of gentle parenting. And one of the steps of gentle parenting is you get on the level of the kid. Now, I'm not saying that is always a bad thing, but I think that when you do it too much and you don't assert that dominant authority and that dominant position, that you do lose some of this authority. But there are times where you do want to get on the level of the kids. And so there are times where I will sit at their level. But there are times where I'm going to stand up and stand over them. And it's the same thing when I'm coaching swimming. And sometimes it becomes even worse when you have kids in a pool, because you're so much taller than they are standing on the deck. So there are a lot of times where I will pull a kid out of the water because I don't want to talk down to them. I want to talk to them face to face at their level. But then there are times where you do maintain that dominance. So to take it in a little bit of a different direction, because I know we just took it in a different direction, but this leadership role that exists where men have to maintain their dominance, and not by yelling, not by physicality, but by mere control and presence. And we forget that presence is an extremely critical part of the conversation when you talk about leadership. What is your presence in a room? What is your presence in your family? And it shouldn't be like dad is only involved, dad is only present when there needs to be punishment or there needs to be correction.
I think one of the defining characteristics of a man is strength under control. And when a man exhibits strength under control, he earns the respect of his wife and his children and his community. Because what it tells society is, I'm a man of virtue, I'm under the authority of God, but if you step out of bounds, I can smash your head.
I think I might need you to replay that one because I think I just caught a context and I'm like, what did you just say contextually?
Contextually, one of the defining characteristics is being what this generation that gave birth to muscular Christianity called gentlemen barbarians, men who coupled the traits of essential masculinity with Christian character. They possessed both physical power and the desiring capacity to control and direct that power towards good. An evil man is a dangerous man because he is under the authority of the evil one, and his physical strength and his God-given authority is being used for evil purposes. In order to counter that, we're going to need these muscular Christian type men who have the self-control to use their strength for the advancement and the protection of all that is good.
Yeah, so, that takes you back to the fourth tenet, right?
Mm-hmm.
So brought into subjection and then used for the protection of the weak. It's that Robin Hood mentality, that Zorro, right? Like the good guy. Why are Americans drawn to superhero movies?
Why do men want to play the Call of Duty video games and read the comic books?
They see this heroism.
I have as I've mentioned many times on my show, my 6-year-old son, Abram, who's now about to turn 7, has a buddy who's his age. At the time, they were 5 years old. Now, my wife takes my son and my 2 daughters to our family friend's home. They also have a son and 2 daughters. The girls are upstairs playing skincare, right? The boys go down to the basement. They find boxing gloves, and they just go bodies for like 10, 15 minutes. These 2 5-year-old little boys, and they're boxing and they're hitting each other in the face. And they come back upstairs. They're not crying. They're not upset with each other. They are having a blast. And my wife and her friend, the mom of the other boy, is amazed because as women, they're like, kind of their instinct is like, you shouldn't be hitting each other. You guys shouldn't be fighting. But they saw the fighting as fun, as playful. And that just proves that God made men to be strong and to fight. And if you've ever been into a classroom before, Jason is my biggest witness, you're going to see the boys running around wrestling, and you're going to see the girls politely talking amongst each other.
But I think that when you go back to self-control and self-governance, if you never allow the boys to have that outlet, then you're going to have issues with them in the classroom. And when we have taken our recess and we've taken our PE, and my gosh, physical education in this country is atrocious. It doesn't even exist anymore. At this point, just get rid of PE. There's no point. But bring it back to what it should be. But when you allow them that outlet, then you find that they have better learning outcomes because they can understand that there's a time for work and a time for play. And what we've done is we completely eliminated that play. But I have a similar experience, right? Just yesterday, same thing. 2 7-year-olds in my gym grab the boxing gloves, and they're wailing on each other. And they've done this plenty of times. And I have 2 rules: no crying, and I don't want to hear about it. Right? Then I start with the preface. Just a reminder: you guys are hitting each other. Mm-hmm. Somebody might get hurt.
Fair enough.
But if you get hurt, I don't want to hear about it because you've made this choice to hit each other.
For sure.
If you want to, that's fine. If you're having fun, that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
But you got to understand you're hitting each other. So I don't want any crying, and I don't want to hear about it. And one of them's my soon-to-be stepson, my fiance's child, and she's looking at me like, aren't you going to stop this? I'm like, no, like, let him go, right? And I'm like, the other parent's fine with it. Let's let them go, right? Mm-hmm. They've been doing this for weeks now. The first time was funny. They're hitting each other, and I have this conversation with them, and they're having this conversation. They're hitting each other, and how old are you? And the other kid goes, I'm 7. How old are you? He goes, I'm 7. What grade are you in? I'm in 2nd grade. What grade are you in? I'm in 2nd grade. And then we all hear this, and we're in the middle of this workout. And he goes, oh my gosh, we're like best friends.
That's awesome.
And everybody in the gym is like laughing because it's just the funniest thing ever.
Right.
These 2 kids are just wailing on each other, and they're just having this conversation as they're punching each other quite hard and going, oh my gosh, we're best friends because we're in the same grade and the same age.
Pound for pound.
Pound for pound.
They were equal. They were ready to fight.
We're going to take a brief time out. When we come back, we're going to continue this conversation.
Teamwork is at the core of any successful organization. Full Armor Sports, led by national champion coach Jason Lupo, is now registering for school year sports programs. Full Armor is a multi-sport teaching and training organization with homeschool options available. All of Full Armor sports coaches are certified and experts in their field. Full Armor's coaches combine for over 500 years of coaching experience. They will help your kids gain fundamental skills, the concepts of teamwork, essential to being successful throughout their lives. Multiple sports options are available now, from swimming, softball and volleyball, to powerlifting and youth MMA. The faith-based approach to making sports fun and productive are a great choice for your kids at Full Armor Sports Teams. Learn more at fullarmorsportsteams.com.
Welcome back to Spiritual Insurgency. I'm Jason Lupo with my co-host, Aaron Lujan.
Howdy, howdy.
Here to continue our conversation on muscular Christianity.
Oh, yeah.
I think we need to start a church. Muscular Christian Church.
Dude, I'd be the worst pastor ever.
This could be like a denomination.
I'd have like 5 members of my church.
They'd all love you.
I hope so.
I don't know.
It's not in my cards, Jason. Let's
Okay.
Let's impact the culture.
I agree. Well, let's impact all the churches. Let's get all the churches on board. I'm not saying that this is the right move, but it's a starting point.
I honestly think we're onto something, brother. I think that this idea, in all seriousness, could catch on like wildfire. I think that it's an idea that needs to be revisited. It's almost an SOS because I'm looking at the young men in today's culture, and I carry a sincere burden for them. My heart breaks at a lot of the things that I'm seeing, and we need this. We need this. So let's talk about it.
Yeah. So let's move on to the next tenet here, because let's go back here for 1 second. So we have a man's body is given to him by God and to be trained and brought into subjection and then used for the protection of the weak. Tenet number 5, for the advancement of all righteous causes. What comes to mind?
What comes to mind is Theodore Roosevelt. Historians point out that he was probably one of the most prominent adherents to this muscular Christianity ideal. He grew up in a home where this ideal was directly impacted by this movement, and he lived it out. And one of the quotes that he had that I think speaks to your question or your point is, if we read the Bible aright, we read a book which teaches us to go forth and do the work of the Lord, to do the work of the Lord in the world as we find it, to try to make things better in this world, even if only a little better, because we have lived in it. That kind of work can be done only by the man who is neither a weakling nor a coward, by the man who in the fullest sense of the word is a true Christian. We plead for a closer and wider and deeper study of the Bible so that our people may be in fact, as well as in theory, doers of the word and not only hearers only. And so that goes back to, what are we going to do to impact the world as we are strong Christians who are subjected our bodies, and the characteristics that we've obtained by subjecting our bodies through physical training and sports is going to parlay itself into being a laborer of the gospel.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that also when you look at, like, listen, we started this show with a conversation. We started this show with a conversation about the Dodgers. Here we are, Christian radio. You came here for teaching and talk radio. And here we are talking 10 minutes on sports and 10 minutes on elections and election fraud.
Sorry, Rockies fans.
And all this other stuff. But there's a reason. There's a reason. And the reason is this. We have put some of these sports figures on pedestals. But God has given them that platform. Mm-hmm. And how we choose to use that platform is extremely important. And when you look at some of these athletes, more modern ones, the Tim Tebows of the world, the Harrison Butkers, look at in hockey, these players that are standing up for their beliefs.
Look at Coach Prime at Colorado right now. He just got served a 4-page letter by the Freedom of Religion group. Can't remember their exact name. It doesn't matter because they're worthless. But they're alleging and criticizing that Coach Prime must not infuse Christianity into the program because it's a public university, and he's explicitly stated, I'm not going to obey, I'm not going to comply.
Yeah, we've seen this play out, and I think we're going to talk about this next week, and I think we should talk about the history of some of these athletes that have used their position for good, right? The intersection of Christianity and sport, going all the way back to Eric Liddell, right? I think we need to get the Chariots of Fire theme song.
Luke,
yeah,
cue it up, bro.
Like, we need that to open up the show next week. Talk about Eric Liddell. Talk about all these athletes that have used their position and used it to greatly impact the platform for the glory of God. And Harrison Butker being, the most recent one that's caused a lot of controversy. But we've seen this play out time and time again where athletes are put on this platform. And this is nothing new, right? This is nothing new. This ideology of idolatry of sport, right? Paul talks about it all the time. He's talking about sport in almost every one of his letters in some way, shape, or form. And it's because the people that he was talking to understood it. It was a part of their culture. It was a part of culture since, dating back thousands of years. It's always been there. People have always seen sport as a integral part of society. And so if you go, well, no, God doesn't like sport, or God never intended for Christians to participate in sport, I think you're wrong. I think at the end of the day, like, if it's always played such a huge role in our societies, I think to a certain degree, God had that in his plan.
Absolutely. And think about all of the characteristics that sports teaches young men. Camaraderie. It teaches discipline. It teaches sportsmanship, playing by the rules, being fair, being a gentleman, but also being highly competitive. It celebrates that competitiveness. And I don't think we're winning young men with the effeminate churches that we have today. I would argue that a majority of the churches we have in America today are very feminine, and it's not appealing to men, and especially to young men. And I think of Pastor Steve Holt, who pastors The Road in Colorado Springs. He does a Tuesday morning breakfast that I've attended a couple times, and it's men only, 5:30, 6 a.m., and it's a full platter Thanksgiving dinner, man. They got burnt brisket, they got manly food. They got smoked meats, and they got eggs and gravy, and then they go in and they sit down at a table with other men, and then they have a pastor or speaker come up and give us a word, and there's worship. But the environment is very masculine, and that place is packed to the hilt at 5:36 in the morning with, I would argue, looks like about 400 or 500 men. Please tell me another place in America right now where you can get 400 to 500 men in one room at 6 a.m. in the morning. I think they're able to do that because I think they're touching on the masculine heart, because men want to be men and they want to be better men. And Pastor Steve has created an environment for that. And I think that's prima facie evidence of what the church is lacking today.
Yeah, I remember years ago, helping with the churches, with my church at the time, it was Sunnyside, with their Sportsman's Expo that they did every year, where people would bring the game that they had shot in the previous hunting season. And it was always a blast, right? It was a family event. It wasn't just men, but it allowed men to kind of showcase their work, showcase what they have done, what they love to do. I think that at the end of the day, if you want to continually shut down the boys in your church to make them more feminine, you're going to have a huge issue. And what we're doing is we're basically saying, okay, boys, I want you to sit down. I want you to be quiet. I want you to say nothing. I want you to have zero fun. And in the process, what you're going to get is a culture where men won't stand up for what is right, what is righteous. Because if they haven't learned that at a young age, that it's okay to stand up for what you believe in, that it's okay to speak out, that it's okay to speak up, that you don't have to sit down and be quiet and just listen to authority, then you end up with a culture that is easy for the taking, that's ripe for the taking, that's easy to be subdued by a ruler, by a dictator, by a king. And that's not what we want in the United States. That's never what we've wanted in the United States. But that's what we are heading towards when we continue down this pathway. And I do understand yes, we need to put God at the forefront. We need to put teaching at the forefront of Scripture. But you also, in your youth groups, in your churches, you have to let the boys be boys.
Yes, and this idea of muscular Christianity is a counter-defensive measure, what I believe is a spiritual attack on the church by the devil. If you look at Mark chapter 3, verse 27, it says, "No one can enter a strong man's house and plunder his goods unless he first binds the strong man, and then he will plunder his house." And the house right now is the church. The house right now is the United States of America. And so what is the enemy going to want to do? Well, Mark chapter 3 tells us that he wants to first bind the strong man. How do you bind masculinity? You take a little boy and you put him in school and you tell him, sit down and shut up and don't move around and don't express the masculinity that God put in your heart and in your body. Be like Jane, be like Mary, who's sitting there politely listening to the teacher and getting all of the A's. And if I sound a little bit bitter, it's because that's what I had to experience, because I was a really rambunctious young man. And looking back, these female teachers were telling me, you're bad. You're bad. You cannot sit still. Why cannot you listen to simple instructions? No, young boys want to socialize by activity, by being physical. Men, as adults, hang out with other men, hunting, fishing, doing activity generally is better, and it's there's more male intimacy, there's more friendship that takes place than sitting across from coffee at a coffee shop like women do.
All right. Well, we've run out of time.
Really? Wow.
I know.
That was crazy.
But we're going to continue this conversation next week. So
Really?
you're going to have to come back. So Saturday, 10 a.m. next week on 670 a.m. Saturday at 10 a.m. Continuing the conversation on muscular Christianity. I'm Jason Lupo with my co-host Aaron Lujan.
Peace.
This is Spiritual Insurgency. Find us at spiritualinsurgency.com. Have a great evening.
Thank you for joining us today on Spiritual Insurgency with Jason Lupo and Aaron Lujan. For more information or to support the mission of Spiritual Insurgency, visit spiritualinsurgency.org. Join us next Saturday and every Saturday at 10 a.m.